This presentation is being brought to you by the Tipton Auto Group, Brownsville's oldest continually operating automobile dealership.
Hello, I'm having great fun putting this series together covering the historic structures of Brownsville and relaying what inside stories that I have come to know, whether they be from hearing them directly from my family throughout my lifetime or by absorbing the details from our circle of acquaintances that extended back as far as we do with the founding of Brownsville. In my case, the tales that I personally heard, which extend back to whatever point of cognition I was at starting 76 years ago, 1949. Then you tack on my father's recollection, taking us back to 1924. Then you have my paternal grandmother's edition, which begins in 1900. My cadre of blue-haired ladies brings us into the 1880s realm. All of this is passed on as eyewitness testimony. I love the oral tradition in storytelling, and through exercises such as these podcasts, you can surely see the value of passing on these stories. Allow me to explain briefly how I'm going to depart from my usual format in this podcast, making it more of a documentary in the final production. Through the magic of AI and a mission of researching, isolating, and splicing what amounted to about 100 hours of early 20th century silent film footage, I satisfied my dream of creating a fantasy reel in which I can figuratively jump back to the year 1851 and lock onto a visual of a moment in my great-grandfather's life experience. Allow me to indulge myself with this fantasy. I hope it projects a somewhat tangible vision for you as well. 190 years ago this week, as I'm releasing this documentary, a boy was born in a small village in Spain, Penduelas, Asturias. It would not be an exaggeration to claim that this child, who was born in that humble setting, would grow up to adulthood and have a profound effect on the developed skyline of Brownsville. It is every parent's dream to give birth to a child that would be prosperous in whatever endeavor they chose and adhere as well to decent moral convictions. Not in their wildest dreams could they have imagined the degree of accomplishment that their little newborn would arrive at in his life. Everyone has spoken of the proverbial rich uncle or the successful grandfather, yet in reality, only 2% of human population ever inhabit those lofty realms. At the onset of my writing the deep family histories associated with some of Brownsville's structures of historical significance, I mentioned that there were colorful, diverse human stories that occurred behind the doors of these dwellings. The emergence of such tales would make the aged brick truly come to life, and the Jose Fernandez y Hermano building is a fine example of that mission. The story that you are about to hear tells of the path of a young boy, aged 15, as he left his native Spain. He does come from a lineage that is speckled with accomplished individuals, however. His great-great-uncle on his father's side ascended to the notable position of the Bishop of Sigüenza that went down in the history books of the church for his having restored the great 13th century cathedral that the bishop's diocese is located in. Little Jose's immediate uncle, Don Jose San Roman, was considered a count in the region of Valle de Arcentales, Vizcaya. San Roman arrived in Matamoros, Mexico about the time of Texas independence, 1836. When Brownsville was awarded township status in 1848, Charles Stillman issued a quote stating that San Roman was the richest man on the border at that time. That was before Stillman's silver mine in Vallecillo, Nuevo León, started producing in the 1850s. The sum total of Jose Fernandez Toral's life achievements may well have surpassed the noble paths of his illustrious family members. At some point in the year 1851, it was communicated to Jose's family, his father being Juan Fernandez Bustamante and his mother being Serafina Fernandez Toral, that a passenger-carrying schooner was to come down from Bilbao, Spain, and stop at Pendueles to allow their young son, Jose, soon to be 15 years of age, passage to America, arriving at the Mexican port of Veracruz. Their benefactor was Jose San Roman, a wealthy merchant who had settled in the town of Matamoros some 12 years prior to that point. Master Jose was to be a ward of his uncle, to receive an education in commercial management. Once the young boy learned of this exciting prospect, he spent a good portion of his free time scouting the horizon on the coast for large sailing ships coming down from the north. Then, one fine day, he saw a likely prospect as his transport and felt it in his bones that this was the one that would carry him to a whole new life far across the waves. He had a certain degree of nervousness, but his mother could hardly contain her apprehensiveness. Bittersweet feelings flooded her mind. Jose was an exceptionally bright and dedicated son. Northern Spain in the 1840s, 1850s was far from being the land of opportunity for a lad of Jose's age. The Iberian Peninsula was still healing from decades of warring conditions that they were subjected to by the French under Napoleon, and the Basque-led uprisings for the Carlist Wars was ongoing at that moment. In her heart, she knew that this would be the best for him. The goodbyes were hard on departure day. She proudly saved her tears until the dinghy was far enough along its tack back to the schooner. Jose did the same. The voyage was to take a grueling 6 to 10 weeks. Upon arriving at destination, a teamster and a wagon was waiting for Jose as per the arrangements of his uncle. Traveling at 15 miles per day, it would take a little over a month to get to the border. Arriving at Matamoros, Jose was impressed with its size and order. At around 30,000 inhabitants at that time, it was as large as Zaragoza in his homeland. Brownsville was puny by comparison, being that it had just been chartered as a city over the last 4 years. It made up for its small size by the insane bustle of erecting storefronts along a dirt main street full of wagons carrying supplies and new arrivals of colonizers. Don Jose San Roman presented himself at his impressive brick business and lodging base on the main thoroughfare, constructed a mere 2 years prior to that point. He was already well established in his business endeavors, comprised of interests held in riverboats along the lower Rio Grande, shuttling goods and passengers from the coast at Baghdad to Brownsville and upwards to a little whistle stop called Roma, Texas. His second largest business was in freight carrying, again utilizing the port of Baghdad as either inbound or outbound for cities in the interior of Mexico off to the west. This is by wagon train. It was to be revealed that the latter of the two businesses was to be the newfound livelihood of young Jose. The following 9 years made a man out of him, to say the least. He learned how to wield a double-barrel shotgun and was affectionately called Pantalones de Fierro, old iron pants, for his insistence to oversee every shipment personally with that double-barrel shotgun. The date range of 9 years was mentioned for a very good reason. It was in 1861 that the whole dynamics of the Delta region was turned upside down. The Civil War had just begun, and the port of Baghdad was the only seaport that the Confederacy had to conduct trade with Europe and maintain a hard currency lifeline by. At a young 25 years of age, Jose was now officially known as a smuggler of contraband goods. Baghdad resembled what one might envision the pirate ports of the Barbary Coast, or Cartagena, Colombia, to be like in those times. Being that Jose had learned how to fight on day one of his new life, he could hold his own in combat as well as in business. By the end of this war and the following period extending into 1866, as the French had started their own war in Mexico, It was a common statement by people throughout the Brownsville region that Jose Fernandez Terral was the only and the first native son to have made close to $1 million. And we define native son as those that were here and made the money, but rather than having $1 million before they arrived. The 1880 federal census lists him as being retired at 48 years old. And you can imagine that was 15 years after the Civil War. In the year 1876, there was a hugely historically important meeting called in Brownsville. It was arranged by none other than the past president of Mexico and soon to be next president of Mexico, Don Porfirio Diaz. The wealthiest merchants and capitalists of the region were summoned to hear Diaz. The meeting was for the funding of the campaign to put Diaz back into office. Of those in attendance, apparently Don Jose Fernandez cemented what was to be a lifelong relationship with Diaz. And it may well have been linked to the size of the financial commitment that Jose gave to Diaz at that meeting. The gamble paid off. And it is sure to be known that Don Porfirio Diaz was in that house at the corner of 11th and Washington. Diaz did ascend to the presidency. And by 1882, Jose had dissolved his partnership association with his brother and others and was on his way to Veracruz to collect on a portion of his investment, a coffee plantation that sprawled over an approximate 10,000 acres of prime coffee-producing terrain in Veracruz. There is a whole continuing story to follow that documents this next passage of his life. In the year 2012, Brownsville City Administration exercised an option in their city planning format that launched a subtle beginning in the rebirth of the Market Square Historic District. They moved the bus transportation hub, it had been there since 1987, out of its location at Market Square to an entire city square across from the Jacob Brown Auditorium on International Boulevard. In 2016, the complete refurbishment of the Market Square complex was begun, inclusive of an extensive remake of the bell tower. The Miguel Fernandez Hyde Yard was given a complete remake, and a cascade of preservation work has taken place up to the present. Pertaining to this particular project, in 2018 I started noticing some activity hovering around the 1866 Jose Fernandez building. Sure enough, I was about to witness day-by-day construction over the following 6 months that culminated in a veritable blossoming of this structure into a condition that I could imagine was like stepping back into 1866 when my great-grandfather opened for business. I have conducted a rudimentary title search which reveals the commercial history of this site. It is as follows. My great-grandfather sold it to a Belgian immigrant merchant by the name of Michael Schatz in 1882, as I've mentioned. And this was as he departed for Veracruz in his new business endeavor. Schatz was very successful in the lumber business prior to his opening of a dry goods operation at this site. A profound tragedy befell him in 1897 as he was murdered on the street in front of his house. By the evidence gathered, the gunman lay in wait for this premeditated hit on the Belgian's life after briefly entering Celestine Jacquot's saloon, surveilling the activity where Schatz was in a poker game with his friends. The confrontation took place as Schatz was not far from arriving at his home, walking down Washington Street that fateful evening. All of the official reports of the time reveal not much more than the limited information I just mentioned to you. I solved this murder mystery in the year 2006, and this is how it occurred. I had a group of elderly blue-haired ladies with whom I was very, very close. Our families knew each other from the early days of Brownsville. They were huge assets in my historical research beyond our friendship. From the year 1999 through 2007, I developed a chain of ice cream parlors in the Brownsville, Port Isabel area. My blue-haired ladies would congregate in my shop in the Palm Village Shopping Center outlet mostly, and we would carry on the most enjoyable conversations, digging up Brownsville's past. On this particular visitation, Marie Vivier, whose family had operated the Opera House around the turn of the century, was having her ice cream, and she suddenly went down a path whereby she said, "It's such a pity what happened to poor Michael Schatz." To which I responded by freezing, wide-eyed. I was well aware that Schatz had been murdered, but what else did she know? I followed by asking what she was getting at. At first, she just brushed it off like she was embarrassed that those words had slipped out. I prodded her, "Come on now, spit it out. What happened to poor Michael Schatz?" She then opened up with a most amazing tale. "Well, Marie had him killed." My head swooned. Marie, I knew, was his daughter, who had married Frank Armstrong. Mrs. Vivier proceeded to tell me that Marie was as hard as they come. She ate nails for breakfast. It appears that one fine morning she and her father, Mr. Schatz, were at the breakfast table, and she broke into a conversation telling her father that she was getting married. The face of the Belgian transformed from one of shock to one that was sternly inquisitive. "Would you mind telling your father who this person is?" To which she responded, "Frank Armstrong." One could see the flow of blood rushing to her father's face. And he finally erupted to exclaim, "I will not have that cad in our family. It would be over my dead body." Well, let's just say he shouldn't have said that. The long and the short of it is, she shopped around for a hitman from Mexico to perform this dastardly duty. Who knows how this circle of kindly old ladies managed to keep this little tidbit of information under wraps for 109 years, until the beans were spilled at an ice cream parlor on a gentle fall day. So let's get back to the chain of custody on the property. The grantor-grantee history reads a sale of the building in 1882 from Fernandez to Schatz. This next entry occurs in 1916 when it transfers to a Sancho de Luna, where it becomes a social club under the name of Luna Bar. That ownership didn't last very long, as de Luna sold it to Manuel Cisneros in 1919 to be utilized as a pharmacy. It remained as such until Ismael Zarate, we called him Lito, enters the picture in 1950, again as a pharmacy until about 1976. Apparently Cisneros was renting to Zarate. Then the record gets a little confused. But one sees a crafts supply house located there, and a sale takes place around 2007. The last transfer takes place in 2018 to a Hector Zavala, and he outfits it as an eatery with a modern chic menu and decor. It's the one that has it now, opening in 2019 and still going strong. I was very interested in the progress, and you will observe that I stopped rather frequently to take photos as the construction was advancing. One heck of a story, eh? Few people would know that through the doors of this building strolled a smuggler of guns and dynamite, a president of Mexico, a coffee planter, a Belgian who was murdered, a social club that was closed down by national prohibition, a long legacy of pharmacists that are still here in this city, and let your imagination carry you away with whatever midnight gambler or soldier of fortune might have crossed the threshold as well. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the upcoming stories with all of their intrigue and the interesting details similar to what we just saw. Good day.